Okay, so recording has started, everyone. Did you want to leave a couple more minutes? What did you?
How many people do we have? And we had quite a lot wanting to come along to the session.
Quite a few, didn't we? Oh, we could wait a minute or two extra.
Excellent. Okay, I'm happy to get started. So just to introduce myself first, I'm Jill Hart. I'm the Learning and Development Manager at ActionAid UK. And for today's personal development session, the Confidence Reset, we are happy to be joining together with our new London office neighbours, Amnesty International UK. So a very warm welcome to everybody that's joined for this collaborative learning session. In a minute, we're going to hear from our special guest presenter, Paula Beattie, who's generously donating her time to support us today. So thank you for that, Paula. I first heard about Paula's Confidence Reset sessions in a group chat at the beginning of the year. And I reached out to her. And in our initial chat, I was just immediately impressed by her enthusiasm for this topic and how important it is, her courage in sharing her own story and her own experience of this, and her wish to support people at organizations like ours. So I felt like there was a really good alignment. I was very happy to start planning for this session. I know that confidence is not always an easy thing to talk about, especially when it dips. So I'm really grateful for today's session, and I'm really pleased to see so many people come along to learn with us today. So it's my pleasure to introduce Paula. Paula, do you want to put your slide up where you tell us a little bit more about yourself and I can share that with people? So Paula is a trained coach and a professionally qualified coach and trainer. She specializes in building self-confidence. She is the creator of original training programs that build more confident employees. And she's the owner of a crazy mission to help 1 million people become more confident. And I was able to see firsthand some of that building of that movement. Paula did a special event for International Women's Day this year. That was just brilliant to see that growing. So it's my pleasure to welcome you today, Paula. Thank you very much. Turn over to you.
Thank you so much, actually, Jill and Sophia.
Got some background noise.
Did you want to put yourself on mute? Well, that brings me neatly onto housekeeping rules. If we can just keep the mute on until the end. I think that'd be handy. So effectively what I'll do is, this is like and I'll introduce myself in a second, but this is a bit of a TED style talk. So what I find is that we can be so into things, but we like to get it busy in the chat. We get busy kind of raising hands and stuff, and absolutely use the chat for questions. But I won't look at it until the end. And I want you to just take this time and give yourself this gift of forgetting about the inbox, forgetting about all those emails that are waiting, forgetting about all the pressures of the world. You both are charities that do incredible things. I'd love you to give yourselves the gift of this hour and a half to just relax a bit. And so we're going to pick up any questions at the end. I'll probably talk for about 50 minutes or so. And I want it to kind of just wash over you and breathe deep. And as Jill said, you know, this isn't always an easy topic to think about, but I'd love to share this time with you today. And I'll talk to you about my own personal story about confidence. At the end, if you could put your cameras on, if you've got questions, if you would, that would be brilliant. You can put them anonymously, and I'll get Jill and Sophia just to quickly say the best way, if you wanted to have an anonymous question, for that to happen. So I'll just quickly hand back to these two.
Okay, so we unfortunately weren't able to switch the anonymous feature on in the Q&A box today. You are welcome to put your questions in chat or in the Q&A box. That's the tab up at the top. But if you did not want to have your own name against the question, there will be one person from each organization that you can just directly send a Teams or an email to ask your question, and we will put those in on your behalf, and we'll keep that strictly confidential. So I'm the person for ActionAid UK staff, so feel free to send me a private Teams message. And Sophia, did you want to say who will do that for Amnesty UK stuff?
Yes, so if anyone would like to ask questions anonymously from AI UK, if you could please message them to me, I will relay the question for you.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. And then if you need captions, then it's just on your photograph, you'll have like 3 little dots. Hit that, language and speech and live captions. So we'll have those. I think we've already talked about putting questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. Yeah, switch your phones off, notifications off, put it away. Give yourselves this gift of your time. We will share the recording afterwards, so that's absolutely fine. And I'm going to do something unusual, which I never normally do, but I'll actually do a PDF of these slides as well. And what I'll do at the end is give a QR code, so have your phones ready. And it gives you my confidence checklist. It's like 12 things I think absolutely help build this brilliant foundation of confidence. I put it together because when I was coaching people, I used to feel like, why am I taking your coaching time? I could just put this and give it over to you. And hundreds of people have found that really helpful. And if you sign up for that, I will send you a PDF of the slides as well to reward your first steps on this journey. And we've talked about the anonymous questions. So let's get on with the talk. So I wanted to start with what my definition is of confidence. So I believe confidence is unapologetically taking up the space that you want to take up without preventing others from taking up theirs. We're not talking about, I'm so confident by diminishing others. It's about just being comfortable in that space. So I was coaching a team recently, and one of them said to me, so my boss keeps telling me to speak up more in meetings. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I want to speak up when I want to speak up, when I've got something to say. I don't want to feel that I have to say something in every meeting. So I said, well, do that. Because actually deciding that this is the meeting where I don't want to say anything, that I'm actually going to listen, that is confidently taking up your space. The problem comes is when you have an idea that you want to share, but you don't quite dare speak up. That's when there's an issue. But don't let someone say to you that you only have value when you're speaking. Actually, the most valuable people I know are the ones who like to process. And then when they speak, you really want to listen to them because they've thought about it. So that's kind of my definition of confidence, really taking up the space you want to take up. And I wonder if that's, to me, it's a physical space as well. So many times I see people shrinking a little bit. They walk into rooms and they kind of take up this tiny little space. And, we're not more special than anyone else. We're not more important than anyone else, but we are as important. And it's like, yeah, take up the space, take up your space. And I think that so much of what we do and say and think is signposted by our body language. And so let your body language reassure you that you're safe and take up that space. So I want you to think about where you sit on this line. So at the extreme right-hand side of the line, you have someone who is 100% internally referenced. That means that they take all of their reference points about who they are and how successful they are, if you like, and how well they've done internally. They just have it from themselves, no feedback allowed. And the person at the far end of the other side of that line is 100% externally referenced. They take all of their feedback on who they are, how they've done, how successful they are from the people around them. And that can include your own internal critic. If you have this voice in your head that's always going, you're not enough, you're this, everyone else can do it except you. And we'll talk more about that during this talk. That is actually externally referenced because your brain doesn't know the difference, between this voice saying this to you and someone else saying it to you. So when you beat yourself up, your brain doesn't know that that isn't you. It thinks that's what others are saying. So have a think about where you sit on that line for just a moment. And typically people who are not super confident are quite a way down this end. And there's an issue, isn't there? Because while there are positives about an internally referenced person. I mean, you know, they're very resilient. And if I explain a little bit more about an internally referenced person, imagine they were doing a presentation. And at the end of it, you said to them, how did that go? And they'd say, yeah, it was great. And you'd say, how do you know? And they'd say, I just know. And if you said that to an externally referenced person, how was that presentation? They'd say, yeah, it's great. And you'd say, how do you know? And they'd say, well, you know, because people were smiling, people were giving me feedback. I got lots of questions in the chat, but it would all be about what other people had told them. There'd be nothing about what they themselves thought or felt. And the trouble with that is that there's a fragility of ego. You can have 99 people saying to you, that was a great presentation, and one person saying, it was great. Maybe just speak up a little bit more next time, almost as a throwaway comment. And you'll say to that person, how did it go? And they'll say, well, it was okay. Apparently, I just need to speak up more. That is the thing that they could focus on the most. And that is the danger. Your ego is resting really in the hands of others. But on this side of internal reference, if you're 100% internally referenced, you have a zero capacity for growth. There's a wall. You're not taking on board any feedback. So resilient, yes, but you're not growing, you're not developing. Externally referenced, really open to growing. However, you're giving your power away. I hope this is resonating. So there was a boy who found a jewel. And he took it to his dad. He said, Daddy, look, I found this jewel. And his dad said, son, I want you to take it to the baker. And when he asks you how much you want for it, I want you to just hold up 2 fingers. That's all. And then come back and tell me what he says. And his son came back and said, Daddy, he said he's going to offer me $2. And his dad said, okay, now I want you to go to the antiques dealer and do the same thing. And he came back and said, Daddy, he's offered me $20. He said, now I want you to take 2 buses across town, go to the fine art dealer and ask him, how much is he going to offer you? And he came back and said, he's just offered me $200. And his father said, son, don't ever let someone else tell you what you're worth, because they will only ever judge you from their own perspective. They have no idea of the limitless potential that you have. You're the jewel. And I think that's exactly the problem with being too externally referenced, too mindful, worrying too much about what other people think, is that we're letting them give us a vote on who we are. They don't know who we are. And not all of them, let's be honest, have a positive intention towards us. And it's interesting, my own story of confidence was, my background is aeronautical engineering. And you had to be confident as a woman engineer. There were 4 of us out of 120 doing my degree. And I worked in factories for 8 years, leading teams, mostly men who had never been managed before, quite a lot of them. And if you weren't confident, you disappeared. So yeah, I was a confident person. And I set up my own company as a management consultant, driving improvements in loads and loads of different companies. I was head of continuous improvement for ICI and Brightax Aerospace. And then I came to work in the NHS, and I thought I really want to work with frontline teams because that's what I love doing. I love working alongside people. And actually, I was helping drive improvements in hospitals. But that was a great way to build confidence, because people, they couldn't change the big things like COVID policies, but they could affect change around them. They could say, I'm going to do an improvement project, and that was amazing. But then I was put on about 4 years ago on a project team with a very toxic team leader, but no kind of pantomime villain kind of person. It was like insidious. It was just drip fed. You're not enough. You're not one of us. There were some very, very isolating behaviours that were just parcelled out. And in 6 weeks, I lost all my confidence. I literally remember waking up and feeling scared at the thought of coming into work. The thought of walking into a room of people when I didn't know everybody, in fact, even people that I did. And I thought for the first time, this is what not having sort of self-belief, self-esteem feels like. And it really shook me that one person could do that and that I would let them. And so I spent about 6 months. Luckily, I had COVID at the same time, so I was kind of dropped off that project team. And I think a reason I found it difficult to talk to my boss was that she was one of my colleagues as well, and it felt like I was being disloyal. So there was a lot of stuff going on. I was, I hit menopause, and I think the COVID didn't help. But all those three things together, that was really what happened. And I spent 6 months really understanding what confidence is. My version of confidence, I understood, was actually different from everyone else. Everyone else seems to think it's, take action, you'll feel confident. But actually, I think there's more to it. And I just reflected and thought. And then I took all of my own Toyota change tools that are all about improving processes and applied them to me as personal development tools and experimented. And then everything I'd learned about getting myself back again, I kind of tested it. I had to work with her again a year later. And sure enough, the same thing happened. And then another woman jumped on as well. So there was kind of two of them. And I realized I'd built this inner confidence that they couldn't shift. And I called it quiet power because it was quiet. It wasn't performative. It was just on the inside. Now, it didn't make me immune to being hurt. It still hurt to have, to feel targeted like that. But I just wasn't available for it. I just got it on the table and said, I'm just not available for this. Here's what's happened in the last 3 days. Yeah, I'm not your person who's going to put up with this. And it did make me immune. So it didn't make me immune to that kind of being hurt, but it did make me immune to the presumption that it was about me. That was the change. This is just feedback on you guys. And that was what was strong. And so that fragility of ego just wasn't there. It's like, you don't get to tell me who I am. You don't get to tell me that I'm worth $2. And I know who I am. That was never on the table for negotiation. And so I put that into a talk, the things that I found, and it's similar to this talk that I'm doing with you today. And I trained 500 nurses in that talk. So I started off like with a few, and then they said, can you do this again? Can you do this again? Can you do this? Can we have a whole day of this? And some of them were like, there was a room for 40, and I remember looking up and 90 people were sitting in that room, like squashed on the floor. So I trained 500 nurses in this hospital, and we became an outstanding hospital in a year and a half. And it wasn't just because of what I did, because they were doing some amazing things as well. But what the CQC said was, nurses are standing up for themselves and they're advocating for patients, and patients are getting healthier. Because what would happen before was that you'd get consultants coming and saying she doesn't need pain meds, and the nurse would go, oh, okay. But then after he or she had left, they'd be like, oh, I can't believe they didn't give them pain meds. But, but they wouldn't be advocating, they wouldn't be speaking up. But now they did. And they'd say, you've been with her for 2 minutes and I've been with her for 5 hours. She does need those medications. She's in a lot of pain and you need to give them to her. And it raised everyone's game. And it made that, the overseas nurses, who traditionally are very deferent to authority, were seeing that people who looked like them were having a voice and thinking, well, maybe my voice counts as well. And I just saw it. It lifted people. And patients were getting better. And I started again with improvements, but saying to people, what is the one thing? I was in theatres in that hospital. What is the one thing that you would love to do? And every single person had spoken for 8 years about patients walking to theatre. So you walk in the morning and then you get into a bed and you get wheeled to theatre. But the trouble is, it takes 2 porters to wheel you. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to find a porter in a hospital. So lifts were being delayed and they couldn't find sheets, they couldn't find pillows. And it was like, hang on, has anyone just... Can everyone hear me? Okay, thanks. Yeah, so effectively what we did was I put them in a room, someone who touched every single part of that end-to-end process of patients walking, because they walk in the morning and it's 100 steps to the theatre. Why don't they just walk to the theatre? And the really interesting thing is that when patients get into a bed, they act like patients. When they walk, they feel in control. Patients were loving it. They were saying, I don't feel scared. I'm not being wheeled into something. And we realised that patients actually recovered faster because of that mobility beforehand. And then they were getting more mobile afterwards as well. 8 years, people have been talking about this thing, and it was the one thing that everybody agreed. Anaesthetists, nurses, healthcare assistants, porters, everybody, surgeons. And I put them all in a room on the Thursday and said, decide what you're going to do. Decide what is it that how do you want this process to work? And I said to the managers, you can stand in the doorway and you can kick the tires, but it's their bike. And they said, well, we want magnets, and they designed it. So I got the magnets over the weekend. We went live in 2 theatres on the Monday, and we had little meetings, just little huddles every day for 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, we went live in 12 theatres. The only one we didn't touch was emergency. And we didn't touch patients who were sort of gynecologically and, obviously other ones. But 97% of patients were walking. And it just lifted people. But a lot of it started with the confidence talk, because I got all of the theatre team leads together and they were just really down and feeling overwhelmed. And this training that I do, which is my quiet power training, that is what that did. But the principle is the same. And it's all about, it really starts with how we talk to ourselves. So let's get into that. Up in the chat, hope you're enjoying this. Because here's what society tells us we should be like: perfectly geometrical. This is what we think to ourselves, by the way. I need to be perfect. And by the way, we hold that perfect vision of ourselves, don't we? When I'm that, then I'll be this, that, the other. Then I'll be wonderful. Then I'll be worth it. And yet this is a picture from my friend Nessa, she's an artist, just amazing artwork. And that's hand painted, every single tiny circle. But I said to her, I love this. And she said, yeah, I've always been drawn to drawing wonky circles. And I thought, what an amazing way to describe us all. Because actually the picture on the left does not exist in nature. And we are, natural people. And I think with the age of AI as well, I think this stuff on the right is even more important. We're human, we're messy. And who wants a society on the left? We want the society of the messy, interesting stuff. And yet we spend so much of our lives trying to be more to the left. And we are, unfortunately, that thing on the right, and I think it's amazing. We should be embracing not being perfect. We should be embracing our imperfections, because the thing that makes me a bit impatient and a little bit fiery, honestly, makes me a really good, loyal friend. There's the yin and the yang. And I think it's really about, it starts with that self-acceptance of embracing who we are and just letting go of this thing, because I'm going to tell you, you're never going to be that. You're never going to be that perfect geometrical person. And yet in my head, when I'd lost all my confidence, there were so many shoulds. I should be fitter, thinner, cleverer, smarter, kinder. I should have a sweeter nature. I should be a better mother, a better wife, a better daughter, a better sister, a better friend. I should be all those things. And yet all we're doing is we're looking and saying, comparing myself with someone else who seems to have those. And the truth is, we never really know what's going on with that other person, and we spend so much of our lives in comparison. This is who we are. And I like to say that I'm fearless in the face of continual learning. So this is who I am today. And it doesn't mean that I'm not, I'm not going to continuously improve. I'm just not there yet. I'm on a journey. And I think one of the really important things to think about is who is sat at your table. So I listened to Michelle Obama, and she was talking to Stephen Bartlett on a podcast, brilliant podcast. And he said, well, how did you handle racism when you're growing up? And she said, well, my parents would frown if we brought it home, and they'd say, do you see anyone like this at your table talking like this? Why are you bringing it into your table? And I thought to myself, what a fantastic metaphor. So I want you to imagine that you have a dining table, and you have a fixed number of seats at that dining table. And everyone in that dining table is sitting down are the people who champion you. The ones who they're not necessarily going to tell you what you want to hear, because, we need that as well. But they have your positive intention towards you. They have you at the center, and they want what's best for you. And instead of filling people like that at our table, do you know what we did? Well, what I did, I let that toxic leader sit down. But you wouldn't let a stranger come into your home, pull up a chair and stick their muddy feet on your beautiful tablecloth. But that's what I was doing in my head. I let her sit down at my table, but there's a fixed number of seats. So just remember, every time you let someone like that sit down, you've given a seat away from someone who is championing you. So I would always say, start with, who is sat at your table? Who are you listening to? Who gets to have a say? Do you admire their values? Because if I don't admire your values, I will respectfully not take any feedback from you on who I am. So one of the people that I spoke to when I was going through this real time of lack of confidence was my coach, Beshley. That's probably one of the reasons I became a coach, because she was so transformative. And she described a snow globe to me and said, imagine you have a snow globe and you shake it up. All of the glitter flakes that are going around are those negative thoughts, I don't think I can, everyone else can do it, you're not this, you're not ready. All those glitter flakes are all the negative thoughts. But what they're doing, when I thought about it after, is they're obscuring. Imagine that was a picture of me inside. They're obscuring who I am. And again, going back to my potential, they're obscuring that. But what she said was, when they settle, that is your natural resilient state. Like, we were born with all the confidence we ever needed. We had to be, because we were born not even being able to walk. We were born not even being able to walk. And so as babies, we learned to deal with failure over and over and over again. And we're designed to do that. And yet something happens as adults when we, go for 3 interviews and say, that's it, didn't get any of them, I've given up. But I've never met anyone who said, oh, my baby's lovely, but she tried walking 6 times, turned out it didn't work out, so she gave up. But we do that as adults. Somewhere along the way, we started shaking that snow globe up so much that it obscured who we were, our dreams, our ambitions. And yet if we just let them settle, we have all the confidence we ever needed. It's just here. And I said to Beshley, so I've just got to find it then. And she said, Paula, it's not even a question of finding it, it's there. It's a question of just shedding all of the stuff that you've layered on top of it, all of that doubt, all of the thinking, all of the beating yourself up. But if you just take a moment and just listen to your core right now, that's where your confidence lives right now. We just got to stop shaking the snow globe. Every time we get hit with a challenge, shake the snow globe. It's good. I've got this. And the more we can reassure our voice, our brains, that amygdala that we have, which was designed for a saber-toothed tiger rattling in the bushes, that's made us go, oh, I can't do this. That, the fear was designed for survival. We would not have survived as a species if we didn't feel fear. But we have swapped the saber-toothed tiger for so many other things. Walking into a room with people, that was my saber-toothed tiger. The truth is that amygdala was not designed for that, continual fear that we do. And so it stops us from achieving things. It blocks our ideas, our creativity. I don't know if anyone's been in a situation where they literally couldn't speak. We're shaking the snow globe. But actually, when we just reassure ourselves, that's all your brain needs, is reassurance. We just say, I'm okay. Look what I'll learn. And I've learned not to fear failure and see it as feedback. Jill mentioned the global summit that I did this year. So I woke up 5 weeks before International Women's Day and thought, what if I did a global confidence summit? It's never been done. And I called it the Build Unbreakable Confidence Summit. And I have 4,000 members in a meetup group called Think Yourself Confident, and they span like 83 countries and 5 continents. I thought I'd have like 100, but I kind of do webinars every now and then for them. And so I invited them, and I got 14 amazing women speakers to join me online from all over the world to talk about a time when confidence, I said, don't talk about your success because you're amazingly successful. Talk about a time when confidence failed you, how it felt, and the decision that changed the trajectory. And one micro tool that every woman here can listen to and take away. And we had people, the most common comment was I joined for 20 minutes and I stayed for the whole 3 hours. That was what the most common comment is. So I'll let you know at the end if anyone wants a link to the recording of that summit. It's a 3-hour one, but you have that time to listen one weekend. I think you'd love it. It was incredible. But the point is that was scary. And I thought to myself, what if it fails? What if 8 people show up? And then I said, but then they're the right 8 people. And funny enough, 48 hours after I put it on Eventbrite and put it on Meetup, 8 people had signed up. And so I had more speakers than attendees. But I think I just kept the faith and just thought, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If we shift something for one woman or man, it would have been worth it. And in the end, we had hundreds. But I think I didn't shake the snow globe. I just said, it'll be great anyway. So the truth is, we have been taught to merge circumstance and thought together as though they're one thing. And they're not one thing. They're 2 very separate domains, the domain of circumstance and the domain of thought. Let me give you an example. We run out of milk. We both thought the other person was going to get the milk. We have a row about the milk. So I say, fine, I will just go and get some. Her. And I'm thinking, well, clearly my career didn't count as much as yours. Clearly you thought your career was more important or your job was more important. And off I go, and I'm driving to the shop to get the milk. And as I pull up to the shop, a dad walks past with a little boy. And the little boy's holding his hand. And they're smiling at each other and laughing, and they go into the park. And I just thought, oh, actually my husband's, he's brilliant as a dad. He loves going to the park with the kids. And so I kind of just lift my mood and I get out the car, and then I have a really nice interaction with the guy at the till in the shop. And I come back and I drive home and I think maybe I overreacted about the milk. And he's there cooking dinner and we kind of hug and we make up. The truth is, circumstance was we ran out of milk. We had a row about the milk. Circumstance has a solidity to it. I lost my job. I got a promotion. I got a great job. I broke my leg. You know, it's those things. I'm not talking about the horrible, horrible things that are happening in the world today. But generally through life, we don't live our lives through circumstance. We live our lives through thought. And something happens. Someone says something that upsets you. It might take 5 seconds. How many hours later are we still thinking about it? And what really brought this home to me, you know, because that example of the milk shows how fluid thought is, doesn't it? I mean, I changed my I changed my mind. I changed my thoughts constantly through that. We don't even know what we're going to be thinking in the next 2 minutes, but we presume to know what other people are thinking about us. And I think we can over-absorb. And I've seen so many women presenters who then said, oh, you know, people weren't really enjoying it. They're overly absorbed. The people looking at you might be thinking about, my car didn't start this morning. And we presume to know what they're thinking about us. And going back to the boy with the jaw, we spend way too much time in our heads trying to figure other people's heads out, and way too little time actually physically with them in the domain of circumstance, building relationships. And a few years ago, this was so rammed home to me because I was talking to a group of guys in a factory, and they were telling me about this great improvement project they'd done, and I said, well, this rings a bell. And they said, yeah, no, we delivered it. You know, we delivered a sort of presentation on it about 3 months ago. And I was like, oh yeah, I wish I'd come to that. And I was thinking, I thought to myself, I think I did go to that. Actually, it was a really good presentation, kind of going in my head. And I said, you should do another presentation on that because, you know, it was really good. And then one of them just said, I will never present again. And like the whole hand was up, you know, and the emotion was incredible. I was like, whoa, that sounds like he had a really difficult experience. You know, thinking, was there some trauma at home later that day? I don't know. It was just, or you know, was something happen? And he just said, I forgot everything. I was standing on the stage. I completely forgot what I was meant to say. And I just stood there and my mouth was dropping open and people were looking at me as though I was the most stupid person in the world. And I just wanted the world to just swallow me up and I wanted to die. And I went, so you're never going to present again? He went, never. And I said, hang on, but, you know, I have just realised I was at that presentation. How long do you think you stopped talking for? Because I kind of remember, now that you've mentioned it, that you did. I said, but to be honest, I remember thinking, oh, I get a pause just to process what they've said. How long did you think you stopped talking for? And he said, it must have been about 1.5 minutes. And I said, I don't even think it was like 10 seconds. In his head, domain of thought, circumstance, I forgot my words. Literally 10 seconds I stood there on the stage. That's the domain of circumstance. But in his thoughts, it was the worst experience ever. He's never going to present again. Now you think what that means. He's never going to go for an interview or a promotion in case he has to present in the interview or in the new job. He's never going to do a father of the bride speech for his daughter. I mean, this is going to limit him, and he's completely wrong. And then I said, but didn't one of your colleagues carry on anyway? And one of them said, yes, I just picked up the thread and carried on and it didn't matter. And I keep telling him. And so this is a really crucial bit to think about, because if we experience life through our thoughts, we can't do a whole lot about a circumstance. I mean, you could maybe practice 3 or 4 more times for presentation, but something might go wrong. Today, the tech might fail while I'm talking. Someone might start up some sort of pneumatic drill just outside the window. There are things outside of my control. But thought is in my control. Not 100%, because I don't think anyone on the planet can 100% control their thoughts. But to a large extent, thought is in my control, and it's within my accountability. I could manage my thoughts, even with that toxic leader. Because what happens? Someone does or says something that upsets us, or we think we failed. We form a belief and attach a meaning. So now that circumstance, that might take just a few seconds. Someone says something. And very often when we form a belief, we have a pre-existing belief about that person, which is why whenever I kind of inherited a team, I refused to let that outgoing manager tell me anything about those people. I did not want a pre-existing belief, because that wasn't fair. But you can have a pre-existing belief. My brother's always been jealous of me. This is what I was on a call with someone recently coaching, and she said, and I took her through this. She said, I was on a call with my brother and I was telling him about a promotion and he just was very offhand. And I said, okay, so let's go through this then. So we form a belief and attach a meaning. I said, what's your pre-existing belief? He's always been jealous. So what's the meaning of what you've, what have you made that mean? And she said, well, what, he was offhand? He didn't care. He wasn't happy for me. He didn't care about me. Feel emotion? She went, oh, I was furious. Choose your response. So we either turn away, where we play small and go quiet, or we turn against, where we get a bit aggressive or passive aggressive, or we turn towards and say, are you okay? Everything all right? Just picking up on, you're a bit quiet. And I said, what did you do? She said, I put the phone down. I went, okay, turn against. What are you thinking now? And she said, yeah, I think I need to phone him and apologise. Because I said, what else could it have meant? You made it mean that he didn't care about you, but what else could it have meant? And she said, well, he has got a newborn baby. So maybe he was just tired. Or maybe I'd forgotten to ask about the baby, or maybe they were worried about something and I hadn't thought about that. Maybe he's missing his job. So this bit here is really where we need to insert our brain and not let thought carry us away with our presumptions. We need to stop shaking the snow globe right there and choose that to turn towards. And then we spend so much less of our lives in our heads. And do you know what? When I started saying to myself, I've got this, I remember pulling into work and having this voice in my head going, no one likes you here. Clear as day. It was like someone had said the words, nobody likes you here. And I just thought to myself, and in fact said out loud, I don't think that's true. They're gone. And at my worst, I had a boss, an ex-boss, and I remember thinking, I need to, I'll get in touch with her and just, find out how she is. I've got time in between contracts. She was doing something for a charity and I'll just see if she needs any help. And I texted her, And 3 weeks later, I woke up, still in this low confidence state where we catastrophize and we self-label about everything. And I just thought, she never returned my text. My next thought, it was 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and my next thought was, she thinks I was rubbish at my job. Literally, that was the thought that came into my head. Can you see? Circumstance, she didn't get back to me. Thought. And so emotion, I felt sick. I had this soccer punch to the stomach. And then what did I do? Choose my response, turn against. In my head, I was thinking of all of the reasons why she was a terrible boss when I had worked for her. She wasn't very good at detail. She wasn't this and she wasn't that. Just to fight that pain of that feeling. She was a great boss, actually. She wasn't good at detail, but she had loads of other great things going for her. But that's how I was trying to push away the pain that I was feeling. And then at 8:26, I woke my husband up and said, let me tell you about what my boss was like, because I needed him to rescue me and say, oh yeah, thank God she didn't get back to you, because we need that, don't we? We need rescuing. And he just said to me, what are you doing? And I just said, what do you mean? And he said, it's Sunday morning. What are you doing? And that was the day that I got Beshley, my coach, because I thought, oh, I've got so much noise in my head. This is noisy stuff. But the really cool thing is that when I managed to quieten it down by just not fighting it, not pushing it away. But now what would happen? Because, you know, sometimes those voices come back, but no, they don't really have any power over me, because if I had that voice that said she never got back to me at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning, do you know what I would say? She's probably really busy, but you know what? I bet she really, really valued the offer. And it's done at 8:01. And I get half an hour back of my life, and my husband can carry on sleeping. And I think that's the thing, because the really cool thing that happened was that when all of that noise went, there was so much more space in my brain for ideas. And that's where the patients walking to theatre came in. Because I would never have been able to do that, to concentrate on that when I was concentrating on all of the stuff that was going on around, you know, what do people think of me? Does anybody like me? All of those things. Too noisy. When we shake the snow globe, we are putting that amygdala on alert. It's blocking ideas. I had so many ideas. And actually, I had the thought of setting up my own company. So that's what I did. And that's the key thing that I want to share with you, is that this stuff isn't just the fluffy stuff. This is the life-changing stuff. We spend more time than we want to admit in our thoughts, presuming to know what other people are thinking. And when we just say what actually happened, what were the actual circumstances, not with our interpretation, but what are the facts? My brother said, that's nice, and didn't say anything else. That was a fact. I've interpreted it in so many other ways. So I would always say, take things back to the circumstance, what actually happened, and then what did you make that mean? Because that was your choice. And so with all of this, I honestly don't think people have a confidence problem. I think we have a thinking problem. And I think we don't fear circumstance, we fear our thinking. I wasn't fearing the circumstance of opening a door and walking into a room. I was fearing, how would I feel if everyone looked at me and pulled a face in the, who are you, or what are you doing here? The guy with the presentation wasn't fearing standing on, you know, half a square meter of stage and stopping talking. He was fearing the looks on people's faces, the disappointment that he would feel in himself, the looks on his team. He's fearing his thinking. And the truth is that when we fear our thinking, we live a smaller life than we deserve. So just because a thought is in your head doesn't make it true. Nobody likes you here. Your boss thinks you're rubbish at your job, you know. And by the way, remembering who sat at your table, just because a thought is in their head about us, someone who's not at your table, doesn't mean it's true. You can choose who you let to sit down. And Michael Neal, he talks about this, about, you know, how we experience life almost entirely through our thoughts rather than through circumstance. Almost entirely, we experience life through our thoughts. As soon as we imbue any external person, place, or thing with our internal ideas of good, bad, right, wrong, we set them up to be in control of our happiness. Does that sound like a powerful place to be in? No. So the voices we need to lose, the gong voice. I call it the gong voice because I think of it was at Rank Studios where you had the guy hitting the dinner gong. That's how it felt. No one likes you. Your boss thought you were rubbish. It was this gong voice. And you know it's a gong voice because even if you maybe don't actually hear a voice, you get this sick feeling. You feel it under threat. But there's another voice, the sneaky saboteur voice. This is your fake friend. This is the voice that says, oh, yeah, no, that sounds like a good idea, but maybe next meeting. This is the voice, you know, if I'm on a diet, for example, my sneaky saboteur will say, it's just a biscuit. You know, it's kind of, it's not your friend, but it sounds like your friend, but it's actually holding you back. And the gong voice is, you can't do this. Everyone else can do it except you. You're not good enough. And so many people I talk to go, someone once said to me, if I spoke to someone else how I speak to myself, they would punch me. Because the truth is, when we beat ourselves up, as I said before, your brain doesn't know the difference between you telling yourself you can't do it and loads of other people. So do you know what I do? First of all, that list of shoulds, it became coulds. I could be fitter. I could be kinder. I could be a better mother. I could be better. You know, never say should, because should is you're not that person of perfection. Could is, it's an option. It's much softer. So we're getting rid of that gong voice, number one. Number two, ice the negative self-talk. Just don't. I backed my car, it's actually my husband's car, into my dog walker's car the other day. And I could have called myself all the names under the sun. Do you know what I said? You're so human. That was so human a thing to do. Done. Just be so careful about what you call yourself because your brain is listening and it doesn't know that it's not true. And so it's going to get nervous, anxious if you want to do something. It's going to try and stop you. It's going to say, don't go for that promotion, don't do this, don't do that, because you've just been telling it that you can't. And of course, we get all these patterns from our childhood. And the thing is we just start entrenching them, but you can unlearn. There was a post on LinkedIn a few days ago where someone said it's impossible to unlearn. And I was like, no, I respectfully, absolutely disagree with you because I've done it. I had these and learned them. Because what have I done? I've built these two voices up instead. Caring coach, gentle challenger. Caring coach is how amazing you are. I mean, literally, I was coaching someone yesterday and she was telling me about all these things. And I said, oh, just take a pause. Look what you've achieved. And she's like, oh. And I said, just, you know, amazing. This is what, where's your voice saying this instead of the voice that's saying, oh, you know, I still haven't done X. That caring coach is so important. I don't know if anyone's ever done Couch to 5K. If you haven't, even if you don't want to run, download it. Pick up someone like Joe Wiley or any of the coaches and you listen. They are perfect caring coach and challenger voices. Caring coaches, amazing. You used to be able to run for 1.5 minutes and now you can run for 8 whole minutes. That is incredible. That's your caring coach. But if you just had a caring coach, you wouldn't be pushed. So you need the challenger voice where they say, keep running, don't stop. But it's like, you know, when I was doing Couch to 5K, my challenger voice would say, I know it's hard. I know you want to give up, but what if you just run to the next tree and see how you feel? And by the time I run to the next tree, I can be like, I think I can keep going. Whereas the caring coach is like, you're doing really well. Look how far you've come. Those two voices are transformational voices. I don't go to bed without thinking, what are 3 things that went well today? And very often it isn't, I got this big deal. Very often it's, I got a lovely hug from someone I hadn't seen for a while. Or, you know, someone seemed really delighted to see me. Or I had a really nice networking call with a complete stranger and we just really clicked. You know, those are my wins. I never go to bed without thinking 3 things that went well, because it's so easy to get caught up in the things that didn't go well. And then if something, like if I have a client call, I'll always say to myself, that was great. Maybe what's one thing you might change next time? That's my gentle challenger. One thing you might improve on. Didn't ask enough questions. Okay, right. That's what we'll do next time. That's what we could do, not what we should do. These voices are so important. And these ones, it's just about not batting them away, but just sitting and going, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway for that sneaky saboteur. And then just doing it. I have an idea. I have a different view. If anyone's open to sharing that, I'd love to do that. Gong voice. Yeah, I've got this. It's going to be fine. And so what is the quiet power framework? This is what I believe confidence is. I think it's made up of self-acceptance, self-belief, courage, and mindset. 4 things. So I do like my Venn diagrams, engineer. But imagine you've got all of them except self-acceptance. Let me just quickly run through what each means. So self-acceptance is I accept myself for who I am, whilst being fearless in the face of continual learning. You're here today because you're fearless in the face of continual learning. You're like, this sounds interesting. I might learn something. But self-acceptance is not just tolerating our flaws, but embracing them because they are part of who you are. Self-belief says, okay, I accept myself. I also trust myself. I believe that I'm going to get to my goals. I trust my values. I know who I am. I know what I stand for. Mindset is, even when I face adversity, those circumstances, which we will, my thoughts are going to be positive. I'm going to say, what did I learn? Not, why did it fail? What did I learn? What's the worst that's going to happen? So mindset is so important. And then courage is the courage to take action, to do something different, to say yes to that, stepping up on a stage. So when we have everything except self-acceptance, we can be super high performing, but secretly we fear that we don't measure up. And this is exactly where imposter syndrome comes from. Imposter syndrome is impossible if you know that you were never meant to know it anyway. I was never meant to know it, but I will at some point. I just don't know it yet. If you have everything except self-belief, you can have positive actions, but you're lacking a strong sense of identity. You're not quite sure who you are. So then you have to go and speak to 15 people to go, was that disrespectful? I could just say, I'm just not available for it because I had that self-belief. If you have everything except mindset, then you have that strength of purpose, but your negativity blocks growth. You're still beating yourself up if something goes wrong. And if you have everything except courage, then you have clarity on what you need to do and who you want to be. But the honest truth is, without action, nothing changes. I will not take any coaching client unless they promise to take action, because it's just a nice conversation without it. So I think for me, I've developed the quiet power framework, and this is kind of what I train things in. But everything we've talked about today is really about all of these 4 things. And I want to just include this because a huge part of what I do isn't just about delivering confidence to people, individuals, but it's also talking to leaders and saying, how do leaders build confidence in others? How do they transfer it? And it was interesting. I was working with HSBC and said to their leaders, what would, how would this make a difference to you? And one of them said, I could go on holiday and not worry about my team not stepping up while I'm gone. I'm going to come back and not have 2,000 emails or find that something didn't happen because no one took a decision. I'm going to find that my team are developing continuously because they're believing in themselves. And so my job gets easier. It's so important to be able to build that confidence in others. And yet I don't think any leadership training program seems to do that. Apart from mine, it just talks about build confidence in the leader themselves. You see, because everyone has a mountain. It could be like mine, walking into a room. It could be speaking up in a meeting. It could be doing a presentation. Everybody has a mountain, and leaders themselves aren't necessarily that confident. They'll always have something as well. So I think as a leader, our role is to guide people up the mountain. So I think of it as a Sherpa. You know, you're a Sherpa. You can shine the torch up the mountain for them. You can show them the path. You can even walk alongside it, but you cannot carry their pack for them, because it's not your mountain, it's their mountain. It's not your path, it's their path. And rescuing is the opposite of empowering. So it's so important to understand that. I was coaching someone recently and she said, oh, I'd said to my boss in my one-to-one, I was nervous about the presentation. And in my next one-to-one, she said, don't worry, I've given that to someone else. You just carried her pack for her. You just gave it. You know, you took that off her. That was a trespass on her mountain. So we have to be super careful as leaders. And so I kind of came up with it's their pack, because I came up with the PACK acronym. So as a leader, what do? We give them perspective. We diminish the failure stakes. We say, well, no one died. It'll be okay. You know, what's the worst that's going to happen if you stop speaking in a presentation, or if, you know, you don't get any questions? What would happen? And you go, oh, I guess nothing. Okay, so not the end of the world then. Or you'll be fine. I'll be there. And yeah, just give me a question that you want me to ask, or it's going to be amazing. So be that kind of caring coach and gentle challenger. But giving them perspective on the challenge is super important. You've done this before. You've done a presentation to 15 people. It's no different. Diminish the failure stakes. A is acknowledge. So we don't want to be dismissive when we're diminishing the failure stakes, because it might come across as you don't see me. People need to feel seen, valued, and acknowledged. So we need to acknowledge the courage it takes and acknowledge the person. And the best way to acknowledge a person is to think about the values that they stand for. So you're building self-belief in them. So rather than say, you'll be fine, actually what you say is, do you know what? I know this takes a lot of courage to do a presentation. Yeah, because by the way, that person might have had sleepless nights for a week thinking about it. Admire and acknowledge the courage. It takes guts to do this. I really admire how you persevere with things. I really admire how you can bring clarity and take a complex subject and make it simple. That's so rare. Acknowledge what it is about them that you admire, so that they feel seen. But acknowledge the courage it takes. Don't take away the challenge. Because when you take away the challenge, like that other leader did, what you're saying to them is, I don't believe you can do it. But break the challenge down. So, you know, rather than, I'm so scared about, you know, presenting in front of 500 people, don't make them present in front of 500 people, but say every Friday, I want the whole team to do a 1-minute stand-up. A 1-minute stand-up. And you're going to absolutely hate it, but I want you to do it anyway, because practice and repetition teaches our brain that this is safe. So right-size the mountain with them. And then kudos, praise. Don't do what a leader did to me once, where I worked for a whole year on something. I think I was operationalizing the 2012 Health and Safety Act, Health and Social Work Act. That took me a year, and it was a year before she said thank you. You know, it's like praise for progress, praise during the event, don't just praise on outcome. And as a leader, what is brilliant is if you can do that in public and say, I wonder what Jill wants to say here, because I find that she has great ideas. You know, Jill, I can see that you're thinking of something. Or actually, you know, Tom did this amazing piece of work, and I just want to tell everyone, I love that book. super important that we give praise, but we don't just praise outcome, we praise effort, we praise progress, we praise the process itself, because that's part of acknowledging what people are doing. And so I'm just going to finish on a couple of slides, which is this one. So this really helped me. I've called it Not One More Moment. And what I used to say is, rather than go spiraling down in those thoughts, where my boss, you know, I had that thought in my head where she thought I didn't think I was good at my job. Or I had a friend who'd been really awful and I kept thinking about it. I would just say, hang on. When that thought came to mind, I would say this: how many more moments will you let this memory define you? How many more moments are you going to spend in your life? We only get 4,000 weeks. I'm more than halfway through mine. How many more moments are you going to spend thinking about this? And it's a genuine question. And then I say, not one more moment. And then, importantly, I redirect to a really happy memory. So I have one or two really happy memories, like my son at the end of the Global Summit going, I'm so proud of you, you know. I just redirect my brain to something really happy. And so rather than spiraling down a rabbit hole of something awful and then having to be resilient and pull myself back up again, I don't go down there in the first place. And what's really interesting is when I did that a few times, I could just have this sequence that said, horrible thought that came out of nowhere, gong voice, if you like. How many more moments? Not one more moment. Redirect to something happy. It really works. And my brain was just doing it. And so you can carve a new neural network for your brain. You don't have to live in the past. You don't have to let the past define you and define your thinking. And that's one way that I really found really helped me. So I call it Not One More Moment. And then I had a mantra. What is the bravest thing you can do right now with respect? I'm not available to be spoken to like that. I remember saying to a boss, why are you shouting at me? Bravest thing I could do right now with respect. Why are you shouting at me? And it made her go, ooh. But, yeah. I have a different opinion. And then proceeded to tell them my opinion. So what's the bravest thing you can do right now with respect? Just comes into my mind. It just helps when I'm thinking like, should I say anything? I think, actually, what would the bravest version of me do now? And then do that. And then the final bit here is visualize your confident self. So imagine in the future that you have this confident version of you. The person that, you know, you want to be this confident. You could be this confident, not you should, you could. Just think, what are you doing? How are you being to yourself? How are you being to others? If you're a people pleaser, has that changed? And how are others behaving towards you? Super important. And then there's a really important question for you. What needs to start for change to happen right now? Just take a moment and write what words come into your mind. What is the smallest baby step you could take right now for change to happen? Run out of water. So I just want to finish on these. This is what I believe: the world won't make room for us unless we make room for ourselves. And the world won't know how to treat us unless we speak up and teach it. And testimonial, if you fancy giving me one, that would be amazing. I do love them, read all of them. So I'll leave that up for a second. And in a second, I'll just show you the QR code for my confidence checklist. I'm on LinkedIn as Paula Beattie, so you can find me easily there. Do connect with me, it would be lovely. And It'd be really nice to do a LinkedIn post with people if anyone was happy to be in a photo. So I'll do that right at the end for anyone who wants to stay. And that's a confidence checklist. Oh yeah, that's for testimonials, yeah. And this will be in the, we can send this around after as well, but it would also be in the pack I'll send out. And then, yeah, so these were the 12 things that I just thought are really helpful. Just anyone could just start doing. They're not, some of them are very simple, like looking after yourself, all the rest of it. But there are some things in there that I think are helpful that lead on from today. And, I've given this to 13-year-old girls, 13-year-old boys. You can't start too early with all of this stuff, in my opinion. And I think there's just the thing that I would say, the final words that I would say to you is, I think there's something around confidence itself, is that if it's true, and I believe it is, that we live our lives almost entirely through the domain of thought, not the domain of circumstance, then what that means is we're only ever no more than just one thought away from having a totally different experience. It's all our choice. So I hope you enjoyed that. I would welcome you to, if you want me to keep sharing the confidence one, maybe, do you want me to keep sharing the QR code? Might as well just keep that one up. Make sure that you all have it. And I would welcome you to come off mute if you wanted to, and I'll have a look at the chat. Oh, and see what anyone's popped in there.
Thanks,
We'll just leave it on this one.
Would we be
you're
able to turn off the recording just for the question part, just in case that's maybe a bit of a barrier for people? That would be great. Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
Perfect.